It's Thursday. It's 4 p.m. Central. I'm Fred McMurray, and hopefully this is... Hey, Ray.
Brad.
Yes, folks. I'm not in California. I'm in Chicago. Kristin's not here. Elizabeth's not here. Our guest isn't here, but we're still going to do the show. Ray, take us away.
Wow, just like the old days, Fred. It'll be 4 years in this February, right?
February. I was looking at it the other day, which piece of quick news. We are now on Amazon Music. So you can just search for Pillars of Franchising on Amazon, and you can see all our past shows. I did notice when I was looking at it and talking back and forth with Amazon about how we get the most out of our Amazon hosting. And I always thought it was February 2nd, but it was actually February 1st we went live. So 4 years, February 1st.
Wow.
And only a handful of misses.
And wow, that's hundreds of shows.
Actually, it's closer to 200 shows.
Wow.
And not even a heart attack can stop us.
Well, watching you today, it's amazing you haven't had more heart attacks, to tell you the truth, because he's just
yeah, somebody's got to be that way, because if I'm not, then we don't get the show on. So it's all good.
Well, I think the fact that our guest is not here, she would have made an excellent segue into our topic today. And because of the fact that she was with True Rest flotation spas, and that's all about relaxing and taking it easy. And today, David's going to talk a little bit, I assume, about eliminating the fear in the business. So, wow.
Fear?
Fear.
Yes. Fear's for the other guy. That was in the movie Trading Places, one of my favorite movies. But congratulations, we'll hit 4 years soon, my friend.
Yes.
All right, you take it over. I'm going to go watch crap.
He's going to go watch stuff. So anyway, today, Kristin and Elizabeth are at a businesswoman's retreat. So they're learning how to, I guess, relax. I assume that's what a retreat is for. I don't know. I've never been to one.
Run away. Isn't that a retreat? Never mind.
So it's just us guys today. And I don't know about you, but when I started my business, my stomach was pretty much in a knot for a couple of years, because there's always that fear when you invest everything that you own, every possible thing that you own into your business, and you're giving it 110% of yourself, that one little thing can go wrong and it can all disappear. So that's kind of our topic today. And of course, we want to talk about a little bit about our mentorship program, because we can talk you through these fearful times. And believe me, it's not easy, but if you plan for the end, what the end's going to look like, it does get easier. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what we're talking about, bringing this up, because I mean, and we do have Jerry with us too. So between the three of us, hopefully we can provide some real good value to the listeners and viewers out there. Because truthfully, if someone's listening to this show and they're sitting on the fence, or they're still deciding, am I going to make this leap, or what's this leap look like? And you wouldn't be human if there wasn't at least some apprehension, some fear, some what if going running through your mind and running through your soul. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, because especially now, right, there's a lot more people entering this potential possibility of going to work for themselves, opening up their own business, having employees for the first time. Yes, they might have been a manager, a middle manager in a larger corporation with a team underneath them, sure. But once you're the one putting your signature on those checks and you're responsible for them wholly, that becomes a different deal. But really, what I really want to do is take it from where they are right now, where the potential franchisee, potential entrepreneur, business owner is right now in their mindset. So if you, as a listener or viewer, are anything like I was, you might have some strength of conviction to say, this is definitely what I want to do. And then what happens is you're going to say it to somebody, and maybe multiple people. And somebody's going to go, I don't know if that's such a good idea. What if you lose everything? Mm-hmm. And man, that thing hits like a sledgehammer. You could have 30 other people saying, that's such a great idea. It's going to be awesome. And then that one person comes and hits that trigger, and you have that little seed of self-doubt every single night you go to sleep and every single day you wake up. And then you continue to speak to other people about it. And that's where it starts. When I say eliminate your fear, this is what I would call kind of, when you're still deciding if this is for you. This is where you have everywhere along the line, you want a team, right? In this particular case, that team you want to surround yourself with are people that are going to be very supportive, realistic, but they want you to succeed. And probably the best people are people that have been there and done that. Too often, somebody wants to go into business for themselves or buy their own business or buy a franchise. They go and speak to somebody who's never done it before. Mm-hmm. And they get their advice from that person. To me, that's the most insane thing, but it happens all the time because we speak to the people we're most comfortable with, and we feel they have our best interests at heart, and they do, which is why they'll try to talk you out of it, right? Because they've never done it. They didn't have the ambition that you would have. So the first step in my mind is kind of, right in the investigation period, as I call it, the kind of, that period of what do I want to do with my future? But surround yourself and speak to the people who have been there and done that, or at least have an interest or have that experience and hopefully success of doing what you want to do. Don't speak to the people who have never done it before.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I've mentioned on the show a couple of times that when I started telling my relatives and friends what I was doing and how I was going to do it, they looked at me and said, "Are you nuts?" And of course you have to be a little bit nuts, but I like the saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And that's worked for me, definitely, because one of the things, I think it's a good thing to have people tell you that, because you can't go in totally overly optimistic. You've got to realize that there are some chances, and you've got to sort of, how should I say, look at all the things that could happen to the business and prevent, you can't prevent them sometimes, but you can definitely put in some safeguards to certain things, like making sure you have insurance, making sure you're incorporated, things like that. Yeah. And maybe even find mentors like here at the Pillars.
Yeah. So, and again, you make a good point, and that's kind of leads into what I was trying to say, though, is it's great to have that the reality check, but make sure it's coming from the right people. Mm-hmm. So it's not pie in the sky. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying is all right, take my experience, for instance, and we can ask Jerry how what he went through, because I'm sure it's similar. But I went there and said, okay, we're going to do this. My wife was on board. We were both on board. We're going to do this. Mm-hmm. When I spoke to other business people, they were cool. And they were kind of starting to guide me. Okay, make sure you do this. Make sure you think about this. Look through this stuff. And then obviously I bought into a franchise. And so that gave me that comfort. I just had to follow their systems, right? And I knew they were the current locations were already successful. So if they could do it, I could do it type of mentality. However, and here's where it comes in. When I spoke to people outside of the business world, those that have only worked for a paycheck, or those that, you know, don't, that look at everything as a huge risk. Personally, I could say working for a company or working for somebody is a huge risk, because anything can happen. But a lot of people feel there's comfort in that paycheck. So those are the people that were like, are you sure it's going to be, you know, the restaurants and bars fail a lot, well, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay. But then when I went back to it and I says, okay, where's my support going to come from? What am I really looking at? Then the clincher was, and this is why I'm bringing this up, is because even though I had full conviction, and at this point in time, we had bought the franchise, we had found a location, we had started the architectural drawings. Actually, they were drawn. I mean, we were moving forward. So I was all in. You know, we were in, investing. So I go to my boss at my job and I says, look, you know, I have to talk to you. I need to put in a 6-month notice, not this 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months notice, right? I you know, the position I was in, I mean, I'm not gonna be naive to say, okay, you can replace me in just a couple of weeks. And that's not being braggadocious. It's just the level of what they would have to do to bring somebody to replace me. So 6-month notice. And I says, and he says, what are you going to do? And I told him, I am going to open up a sports bar. There was no support there. He went absolutely ballistic on me. He says, are you crazy? You're going to fail within 6 months. You're going to ruin your career. You're throwing this all away. You just got married. You and your wife are going to be bankrupt. I heard it all in about a 3-minute blitz. I walked out of that office, sat down at my desk. My assistant came up to me. She says, are you okay? So I must have been white as a ghost. But that was the biggest sledgehammer to where, if I didn't have so many people in support at that point in time, everything from the franchisor to my investors, to the accountant, to the attorney, to everybody I'd aligned myself with, that would have crushed me. There's no question, because I sat down and for a brief moment, I went, oh my gosh, what did I just do? But then I shook it off and you move forward. So that's kind of the investigation. Jerry, do you have anything similar to that?
Yeah, I was letting you wrap up, David, because as you were talking, you know, you talked about fear, and if you were spot on. If you're thinking of leaving a corporate America and buying a franchise or something like that, if you don't have some fear, everybody else should be scared. Your banker, your attorney, your wife, everybody should be scared if you're not scared, because you don't understand what you're getting into. But the fact is, your fear should drive all of the things that help those fears go away, whether it's research or, you know, tag teaming with some industry experts, as you said, the franchisor, having a great attorney and so on to help guide you. Those things help make fear go away, because, you know, they can kind of check the check boxes and make sure that we've got everything covered. I remember, as you were telling your story, I remember Mickey and I had great careers, and we had our fingers in a lot of other things when we decided to go into Great Clips the first time. And I remember we had some friends over one evening, and we introduced the concept to them and said we were going to do it. Same thing. They said, "What? You don't know anything about hair. What are you doing? Are you crazy?" And I go, "Well, the two don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, but we can tie them together if you'd like." But, you know, I explained to them, we have a great franchisor. We've talked to other franchisees, and there's super support there and all those kinds of things. And it made a lot of our fears go away. But I remember when we did that, it was an eye-opening as to how we were going to be perceived by the people that know us best after we make that decision. And now you fast forward, and literally our best friends in the world are fellow franchisees, because they live the same life we do. They have the same fears, the same headaches, the same hurdles. And so, and I look at it as fun, because we connect with people all over the country that we can talk a different language to and really understand. We've got a support group. We talk about that every week, the support that goes with franchising. And so this whole fear thing is just us getting control of the unknown. And once you get that done, everything else is pretty straightforward.
you mentioned the word control. I want you to kind of think back a little bit when you were working for someone else and layoffs started rolling down the hill. You had no control over that, but you still had the same fear, that fear of losing your job. Now, how am I going to support my family? So you decide to buy a business, okay? Same fear, but what's the difference? You now have, even if it's a small amount, you still have control over what's happening to you.
Well, and I'd add something to what you just said, Ray. You know, when you're in business, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes in the business when you work for a business. So you have fear, but it's maybe unfounded, but at the same time, you may suddenly get a pink slip the next payday because they have changed direction or something like that. When you own your own business, you should be able to see the warning flags coming up, the warning signs, and then you can course correct. So your fear would guide you to make those course corrections so that you never have to deal with, you know, losing your business or going bankrupt or any of those other things that your friends and peers may try and scare you with, because you have far more control over it than you ever did when you had a job.
Yep, that is the key word right there, control, because now you do have control over what's happening to you in your life, and it makes a big difference.
It really does, and it's ironic because you know, not to get too philosophical, right? The old acronym FEAR, false evidence appearing real, and that's what people will kind of inject into your being, into your subconscious, and all of a sudden you start becoming fearful of something that may or may not ever happen. What's the old thing? 90% of what you worry about never happens anyway, so only worry about what you can control. But the whole idea of entrepreneurship, that it
recording in
into,
progress.
That's where all of a sudden everybody started saying, well, I want to get a job. And then we morphed from, I'm going to stay with this company for 20, 30 years, get a gold watch, see you later, bye, whatever. They kept you enticed just enough to never leave. And now it's okay. Now it morphed into people are maybe always looking for a better opportunity, right? The longevity in each business isn't there, and that's fine because everybody should be looking to better themselves. And now I think we're entering into another age where people now have a taste of a little bit of more freedom and the ability to earn income without having to depend on someone else to write those checks. And that's where I believe a whole lot of people are sitting right now. And those people, unfortunately, most of them are conditioned to rely on that paycheck. And that's where I feel, you know, that fear, and we're all going to feel it. If you're not feeling, as Jerry said, there's something wrong with you. Everybody else should be afraid that you're not afraid. But there is that little bit of fear. And the other thing is that fear of failure. Hey, look, none of us were 100% perfect in all of our decision making. There's money we've lost. There's money we didn't capitalize. There's mistakes we've made along the way. But we're all sitting here on this call because we recovered from them and we learned from them. Don't ever doubt your own ingenuity and your ability to overcome. And I think that's the biggest part of when someone's making that transition. They don't believe in themselves enough to say, look, my guiding philosophy is this: if someone else can do it and they can teach me how to do it, then I can do it. And there's no reason why that shouldn't be anyone else's mindset that's listening to this program right now, especially in a franchise situation, and especially if you have someone kind of mentoring you along the way.
Well, David, you have some brilliant comments there. The entrepreneurship thing over the ages. Yeah, you know, our ancestors, when they got off a boat, they had to figure out if they're going to be a butcher, you know, build horseshoes and shoe horses, run a store, be a farmer, some of those kinds of things. So everybody was an entrepreneur back then, because mainly it was one or two people working together to make something. And the industrial age changed all that and so on. And so as you fast forward, we've had that bred out of us to some extent, because everybody got used to just going to work for somebody. So now we've created false fear about entrepreneurship because we've got several decades that have passed since that. And, you know, society has become used to everybody just having a job. Well, the fact is, you know, people who do really well most of the time don't have a job. Their job is to create wealth and to create a great career path for themselves and their families by building a business. And if you build it through a franchise model, the hard work's already done. You just got to get in and run it and manage it and follow the system add a little of your secret sauce and work ethic and it'll work. And it gives you the chance to, multiply that by several locations or something like that, which generally in the past, the entrepreneurs that were our ancestors were happy to have one location and just make enough to eke by as they were doing it. So now we've got the chance to, build, as I said, generational wealth and those kinds of things. And that's the beauty of the franchise system. So yes, you're going to have fear. Fear is actually good if you use it correctly, because it'll drive you to do away with some of the things that cause the fear, and it'll make you stronger. And David, to your point too, I've learned far more from my mistakes than I ever learned from my successes, because, first off, if you're like me, you make a promise that'll never happen again. And you analyze it and figure out what you did wrong so it doesn't happen again.
He's giving me the sign here. He wants to do a commercial.
So before we go to commercial, Jerry, I want to go back to what you just said. So are you saying you'd rather have a lot more learning experiences in the future, or a lot more successes in the future?
Can I have both, Fred? Because they kind of go hand in hand.
One leads to
because
the
the
other.
old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I believe wholeheartedly is true. So you learn from those things and you get better. So the next time you do it twice as good. Go to commercial. I want to finish talking about this.
I love Sun Tzu. Awesome. All right, here we go.
Hey, franchise owners. How's your local marketing? Do you feel like you could use some help keeping up with your social media posts and comments and reviews?
It might be
Do you
muted.
wonder if you could be doing more to attract local customers? Are you able to identify new move-ins to your local area? At Westvine, we help franchisees like you reach more local customers through digital marketing. With daily monitoring, creative content, ad placement, and customer data intelligence, we'll get your business in front of the people who want your products or services. We also work with franchisors who need an agency to handle the digital marketing for all of their locations. If you're ready to reach more local customers, give us a call at 805-265-5440 or visit us at West.
And we're back.
All right.
One of the things that this kind of reminded me of, we were talking about fear, and it comes with the job. But if you think of fear, I'm sure we can. It's not really fear. There should be a better name for it, but as sort of like a violin string. Okay, if it's too loose, it doesn't sound right. If it's too tight, it doesn't sound. So if you have too much fear, obviously you're going to make some wrong decisions. If you don't have enough fear, you're going to go head first into something and make some mistakes. So you need to have a little bit of that fear. And when you really think about it, there wasn't that much different than when you worked for somebody. You still had that same fear. They kept that, they tuned you like a fine instrument. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the thing. I was thinking about this at the break. So, okay, I think some of us are naturally born with some type of entrepreneurial spirit, right? So, I had paper routes. I used to hold carnivals in the neighborhood, all that. So evidently there was something in me, but I really believe the catalyst for everything for me was this. Growing up in a kind of lower middle class, whatever. The father was a steel worker. My mother worked a customer service job at a large corporation. And here was the thing. She had 4 brothers. All of them worked for themselves. They all had their own business. She had 1 sister. They had their own business. My dad being a steel worker, that was like riding a roller coaster. What I remember as a little kid growing up was if they went on strike, we didn't eat. Who brought us groceries to eat was my mother's, brothers and sisters feeding us a little bit. They'd go on a wildcat strike. Who knew what was going to happen with that? Next thing you know, they're fighting the whole bit. Back then, I didn't even know if my dad was going to come home alive with some of those strikes with the steelworkers.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sitting there going, the impression that made on me was, hold on a second. While my parents are preaching, work for a company, have that stability, this and that, we were the ones that were dependent on my aunts and uncles that worked for themselves to kind of support us during those tough times. And I was a young kid, but that made a huge impression on me to say, I always want to be in control of my own destiny. And so it really wasn't difficult for me to leave. And I had a great corporate path, right? I'm not going to deny. I was there 7 years, and in another couple of years, I'd have been a vice president of that company I was with. So I had a great path that I gave up. There's no question about that, as did my wife. She was in sales and been with that company for, I don't know, 10 years or something. So we gave up our careers. But the key point was when I was sitting there at lunch with a couple of other buddies, and it was an odd question. I said, what do you want to do, with your life, so to speak? And I went, weird question, since we're on this corporate ladder path. I said, but I want to own a sports bar. I think the thing was, it was always, I wanted to be accountable for my own success and or failures. And I think that's something that somebody has to have. But having said that, I knew enough to raise point to say, I'm not going to do this on my own. I'm going to go seek out people who have already done it and can teach me and shorten my learning path, my learning curve, and help put the odds more in my favor of success. It's not like I was just throwing, a chip on black and saying, spin the roulette wheel and hope I hit, right? I mean, I wanted to stack the odds in my favor. So I would recommend that. And that's why we're so passionate about franchising, and also teaming up with someone that can kind of hold your hand through that. So it isn't just pie in the sky thought, but somebody can give you the ups and downs, the ins and outs, and help you make those good decisions to put the odds in your favor to eliminate a lot of that unknown, which really leads to fear.
Yeah, because, in most businesses, there's ebbs and flows in the business cycle. Sometimes the months of the year make a difference depending on what your product and service is. And how good would it be? How much fear would be displaced if you had a group of peers who had been doing that business for a period of time, who could warn you proactively that January and February you're going to lose money. You're going to be on the downside of the cycle. So save some money in the last 3 months of the year so that you can make payroll without borrowing money as you go through those first 2 months and those kinds of things. And that's really what you get with franchising that you cannot find with other small business opportunities, because we have not only the history of the franchisor, but all of the history that's cumulative, maybe hundreds or even thousands of years, depending on the organization you're with, that have seen the comings and goings of those kinds of things. So in one of the businesses I'm involved in, January and February in the Midwest are terrible. Yeah. We know we're going to lose money, but we know that, so we can prepare for it. And then we're not fearful of how we make payroll in those 2 months, because, it's kind of like a little orphan Annie. The sun will come out tomorrow, so we know March is going to come and the weather's going to turn around. People are going to start getting out and spending money again, and we'll be good. So we just have to have enough in the bank from the good months to make sure that we're ready for those 2 off months. And you just don't have that with other types of businesses.
No, that's true. That's true. And the thing is, I think one of the things that got me in business was a little bit of fear, because I saw what little I had in the way of retirement, and approaching at that time my mid 50s. I thought, I think I want to enjoy myself a little bit more than what I have invested in my retirement account already, and it just wouldn't be there. So I basically said, okay, let's take all of that and invest it. And I thought about the end, in mind, thinking about how I want to retire and what I'm going to do. And that's what drove me. And so fear on both sides of that equation, fear of not having enough for retirement, and then fear at the beginning of that. But I believe now I'm able to enjoy the fruits of that.
Yeah, and Ray, that's a little bit similar to us. We bought our first location while we both had great careers, like David, great careers. We were going to stay there forever. And we bought our first one to supplement retirement, so that we had extra income in retirement. And lo and behold, we did really well with it. So it suddenly became our job, if you will. We decided to quit our real jobs and go forward with that. And look where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody said there is no such thing as a gold watch any longer. And I think that's because jobs come and go. You hear about people hanging on to a job for a couple of years and hopping and how people, I know, my father he was an entrepreneur, but if he wasn't, then he would be definitely relying on that gold watch. He'd be working for some company for 30 or 40 years and hoping that the retirement would be there when he did retire. And that's another hope that you don't know really exists, because there's some companies to say, whoops, sorry, we used all the money for something else. But
absolutely,
it's there, and there is no gold watch any longer.
Not only that, I think this is going to get a little bit off topic, but when you're trying to make that shift into your own business, franchisee, entrepreneur, it's a little bit of a financial education too. I think a lot of people get hung up on their income and then building into retirement, when truthfully, you're paying more tax as an employee than any other person out there. I mean, there's a reason why when you own your own business that it's more beneficial to you tax wise, in a lot of areas, and some things that you can do. But it's making that shift into an entrepreneur. And here's the big thing I want to talk about is everybody looks at an income, okay? And we all know as you climb those in income, your amount of tax that you're paying increases also, which is fine. Yeah. To a point, because you're still growing your income, but you're just growing income. And then if you're saving that money, inflation's going to eat it up along the way. So you kind of never get caught up. It's right, the proverbial rat race. If you own a business, you can still generate a good source of income, hopefully replacing your income or doing better, but you're also building value into that business. So while you could take the same amount of income, invest it however you want to do so for your own retirement, that would be similar to what if you were working, you also now have this asset in an entity that is worth multiples of your earnings that you can sell that you wouldn't have if you just continued to earn an income. Jerry, you and I've spoken about that a couple of times. I mean, the asset value is really kind of the cherry on the top at the end of the day, right? And a lot of sports franchises, right? Everybody goes, oh, these multi-billionaires, blah, blah, blah. And they go, their businesses, they bought it for $300 million sports franchise, and now it's worth $1 billion. Yeah. And they've also made a lot of money along the way.
That's right.
So that, it's the same thing. So scale it down to your business. Think of along those terms to say, look, what if I found a business that made the same amount of income or more than I'm making now, and I built that value, and in 10, 15 years or 5, 10, 15 years, I sold it. What chunk of money is that coming back to me? So, I mean, Jerry, you and I have talked about that before.
David, you're right, because another thing that people forget is the business is paid off by income from the business. So that's like triple dipping by the time you get done, right? You have an income, you have an asset at the end of the rainbow, and that asset was purchased with money that was generated by it. It wasn't like you took that out of your pocket, although the whole business is your pocket to some extent, but you're still taking a salary. You're getting the benefits of, perhaps a company vehicle and, going to conventions and all those other kinds of things that turn into mini vacations. And almost all of that is written off as a part of the business. So, it's way beyond what you think you will make out of that business as a salary, if you will, because there's so many other benefits that go with it. And we haven't even talked about running your own schedule, because once a business is stable and you've got people managing it and things like that, you pick and choose when you need to be there, and to a large extent. So you have a much more flexible schedule. And literally, I just shared something today with Kristin, who I think we'll talk about in the future, but it was a meme that showed that in the past, we all looked at our value to some extent by a 50-50 split, salary and title, right? Are you a vice president of something, and how much do you make, right?
Right.
And now, especially now with the Great Resignation going on and people looking to get into business, franchising fits right into that, because it's a lifestyle choice to some extent. So, we're looking for mental health and physical well-being and some time, free time and things like that. We want to have, some almost a job title as being the entrepreneur or the owner or the franchisee or something like that. And all of those things are a part of franchising. So it is, in my opinion, the best landing place for somebody that wants to change their lives by getting out of, a job or corporate America and looking for what the rest of their life looks like. Because it is, well, there's people like us, all of us on this call, right?
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was getting into. I knew nothing about hair. Now we've got 36 salons. My kids run it. I'm advising people all over the country on how to make it successful and make it better. And just as David is in his group, and Ray helps people and so on. And when we started these journeys, we didn't know anything about the thing we're doing. And now we're the experts.
Yeah.
Fantastic point.
One of the things you said, Jerry, remind when you're talking about all the things, tax wise, that people don't realize is that, especially in the beginning, you have the people think of, oh, there's you in the business. Not really. You are the business. You're integrally part of it. So everything you do, everything you say, all your thinking all day long, whatever you eat, drink, and sleep, you're thinking about the business because that's part of you. So yeah, the tax write-offs are nice, but that's your reward for working, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, as we circle back to fear a little bit, which is kind of this whole thing that started, when you're thinking about going into a franchise and you're checking those boxes to lower your fear level, once you decide on what kind of franchise you're looking at, you're going to get an FDD, or a franchise disclosure document. And in that document, there are all kinds of pieces of information that should continue to lower your fear level. So in the FDD, you're going to have the failure rate of that particular franchise. So you can look at that and extrapolate and figure out if it is a good investment for you personally or not. They have to list any times they've been sued, the franchisor. So you have a chance to see if they've got very many unhappy franchisees out there, which helps you make a decision as to whether you're comfortable with that and lower your fear rate. They break it down into all the financial stuff, so you can see the quartiles of revenue and profits and costs and things like that. So you can see, if you just look at the second quartile, or even where the second and third quartile meet, which is kind of average, you can extrapolate that from that and decide if that lowers your fear level, which it really should. I am an overachiever, and I still look at where the second and third quartile meet, because worst case, if my pro forma looks like I can be successful at that rate, everything else is gravy above that. So if I really push, I do a great job and end up where the first and the second quartile meet, or maybe even above that, we'll be doing really well. So this whole fear thing, when it comes to franchising in particular, there's a lot of ways to quantify that and ease it and make it go away and things like that. There are great valuation models. If you buy a new franchise, you've got the FDD that helps take a look at all those things. If you buy an existing franchise, there are valuation models based on generally profitability. And if you could buy a business that's making X amount of net profit per year and have a salary, and through that net profit, pay it off in 3 or 4 years with the plan to own it for 10 or 15 or 20 years, how could you not make that decision?
Right.
It becomes very logical at that point.
Right.
And talking to owners of that particular franchise you're thinking about is extremely important. And you want to talk to not just a couple. I think in my case, I did five people who were still in the business and 5 people who said, this isn't for me. Because I wanted to find out, well, why isn't it for them? What made them make the decision to drop the franchise? And in my case, I didn't find anybody who said, well, you know what that damn franchisor did? No one said that. So that's why I'm a Molly Maid owner.
But Ray, that's a great point, because going back to another part of the mindset of fear of someone who's looking to make the leap can be addressed by that. Because I remember, again, going back to my upbringing, right? Money doesn't grow on trees. It takes money to make money. Only the rich get ahead, all this other stuff. So, that gets put into your mind that, oh, shoot, this isn't for me. I don't even know why I'm on this earth, because I'm not one of the chosen ones type of mentality. But when you look at this, and going back to what you just said, it just struck a chord with me. Is one of the things I was so intimidated every time in my job, I'd have to deal with the business owners, the dealership owners, all these people. and go, man, they must be so smart and sophisticated in the ways of business and everything else to have these $1 million loans and businesses and all this stuff. And it was intimidating until I got to know them. And I'd walk away going, they're not better than me. What are you kidding me?
That's right.
And so I don't want to say they were derelicts like I was, but I'm sitting there going, wow, wait a minute. I'm not as intimidated anymore. And then once I started to understand business and other franchisees and other business owners, when you're exploring, that's why I tell everybody, go ahead and explore. It costs nothing to explore. Go ahead to explore. And you're going to start to see some people that you might hold in really high esteem because they own 36 grade clips. Oh my gosh. And you're going to talk to him and go, okay, yeah, he knows what he's doing, but he's a guy just like me. And that's going to give you a level of confidence to start to eliminate some of that fear. I mean, it really was an eye-opening experience for me when I started to get to know and speak with some of these people who I thought were just so beyond what I could ever do with my life, and realized they were no different than me, but they were able to follow a system. And once they followed the system, they became successful. And the other thing is, a lot of people, when they hear the word franchise, they think of McDonald's, they think of all these big franchisors. There are literally thousands of franchisors out there. You're doing business with them every day, speaking to our listeners, and you don't even know their franchises.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
Well, and David, you bring up a great point, about the guys that are successful in franchising. When you finally meet them and you've wanted to emulate them and you discover they're they're just further along in the continuum than you are, because maybe they made the decision earlier or whatever the case might be. They're you. But I'll add to that, and then I got a little story to help complement it. When you meet some of these people that are considered successful, you'll also walk away going, how did they become successful? Seriously, if it weren't for the franchise system, they would never have made it, So you walk away going, hey, I'm going to be really good at this,
Yeah.
And the whole back to before Fred joked with me earlier about, do you need more learning as you continue to get experienced in this? Well, the fact is, even when you've been doing it as many years as we all have been doing it, we still make mistakes and we learn from them. And I made a doozy recently, and it's in an area that I love, which is real estate, choosing real estate, negotiating real estate for franchises. And, I'm with a new brand, and I thought I was handling it the way that they had set out, and it wasn't. And I got ahead of my skis for just a minute and made some decisions that had not been approved. And I had to go back and beg forgiveness and go through some hoops to get it all cleaned up. But I learned from it, and I was able to look at the people in power and say, never again. This will never happen again, because A, it was stupid that I did it. B, I lost sleep for a few nights until we got it all fixed up. And C, it makes you look bad, and I hate that. So, but no matter how much experience, you can have that.
Yeah, Jerry, what you said, after you said that in the very beginning of what you just started there, I started thinking, I went, wait a minute. Everything that I just started with and what you just started with, that means I was in that position. And since I was the first franchisee of that chain, that means it grew so fast because everyone looked at me and said, if he can do it, I can do it. That kind of went full circle on me. I'm not so sure I should have brought that up.
We were talking a little bit about, what does an entrepreneur look like? So I was out visiting. We went to stop and wish a friend of ours a happy birthday, and we stopped and we're talking, and they were having some work done on the house, and this guy comes out, and the owner of the house introduces me and my wife, and he says, oh, by the way, and he owns the Molly Maid franchise in the area. And he looked at me with his eyes big, and he says, I see your cars everywhere. Everywhere I go to work, I see your cars. And he says, but you look ordinary. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what am I supposed to look like?
And that's the perception, right?
Yeah,
that's the perception.
Really.
I was having a conversation with somebody the other day who knows just a little bit about franchising, but not a whole lot. And they asked me how many locations I owned. And I said, well, I own 36 great clips and I'm building the joints and things like that. And they had this astonished look on their face. And when they do that, you know, your mind's going, well, what did I say? What did I do? Why are they looking that way? And first off, number one was they said, and get this, I didn't even realize anybody could own 36 of something, which is a big question mark in people's mind. And then the second thing was, I didn't think you could do that, Jerry, because I know you.
That's just it. And that's just it. And that's why I said, you know, sitting in the place where a lot of our listeners are sitting, we get it. But understand this. Jerry said it earlier in the show. We're just a little bit ahead of you. I mean, we were all in that exact same spot. No special skills, no knowledge in the business that we were in. The same apprehensions, the same fears, the same, I'm not sure. I don't want to get ripped off. Do I trust this person? You know, what's the business model? Look, trust me, you're going to work every day, or some people did, whatever. And it's it's the same questions you should be asking, because you don't know what's going on with that business, right? You go back to Enron, all of a sudden the whole thing closed and people are sitting on the curb with their box of stuff from their office, right? So, I mean, all I'm saying is we understand that there's going to be apprehension, there's going to be fear, there's going to be those things of, can I do that? So take the steps that you need, whether it's in the investigation stage, the pre-opening stage. Once you open, take the steps, lean on the people, been there, done that, learn and understand, and start putting the odds, stacking those chips, stacking the odds in your favor. And that kind of starts to eliminate, you start feeling good about yourself, and especially if you're part of a great system. Now, I'm part of this system, and it just feels good. But we understand where a lot of you people are sitting right now, because you're hearing outside noise. You're hearing people say that this is dumb, that you're getting, that it's too risky. And then you have this other side, the other one on your shoulder saying, are you sure? You don't have the confidence. You've never done this. What makes you think you can do this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's in you. It's in every one of us. It just makes it a lot easier when someone is helping you along the way.
When you think about, a lot of people go out and buy a lottery ticket. What are your odds? 1 in 10 million, 80 million? I don't know. They're astronomical. But when you buy a franchise, your chances of success are between 80 and 90%. And that's a pretty damn good odds in my book.
And I would venture to say that that 10 to 20% came from not doing the proper steps, came from the franchisor might not have been doing that's where you want a mentor. You want someone to kind of, hey, raise the red flags for you. It's like you said earlier, Ray. Don't go into it blindly and say, oh, it's all sunshine and roses. I mean, we want to make sure that everyone who is mentored by us is making the most possible, positive, profitable decision they could make. And we're not just gonna, we're gonna help you point, look at the areas that might be, hidden in the corner, so to speak, because we've all been there.
Yeah.
Well, and I always question, why would you want to make the same mistakes David made, or Jerry made, or Ray made? Why would you go down that path when you don't have to?
Yeah.
That's why you have mentors, why you have advisors, why you have people that can help guide you, because they've either made those mistakes or learned from somebody else that made the mistakes. They're mentors, if you will. So there's no reason to go down that. Mentorship is such a painless way to go to try and learn how to do anything in life, I think, but certainly in franchising, because they're readily available. There's people from the other franchisees to people like us that are on a third party type platform. Why would you go down that path? Let us help you miss those potholes, accelerate your growth, make the right decisions, help make your life better in the long run.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you doubt it, what small business, I don't know what the numbers are of the GDP, what is it, over 50% of the gross domestic product of the country is done by small business owners. That's us. That's you. That's
right.
That's what it is. This country runs on small business. So for people to be afraid of opening up their own business, be part of that small business, it's what this country runs on. Don't be fooled.
Yep.
Well, and so much of the fear of people thinking about getting into small business or buying a franchise happens because their favorite ice cream shop was only open for 1 year or 2 years, and they know it's a franchise. And they saw another bagel shop down the road and a sub sandwich place that they was only open for a little bit. Those are in the minority, folks. And to David's point, the vast majority of them, it comes from two things. Number one, they made the wrong decision with the wrong franchisor. They didn't do their due diligence. Number two, they were smarter than the franchisor and didn't follow the system they just paid for.
Yeah.
And now they're paying for it again because they're not going to make it because they didn't follow a proven system.
I think we've presented well the things that are involved in getting into a business here. And it's about time for us to wrap it up a little bit. And
Perfect.
We certainly miss our female hosts who are off having a good time today. And I hope they enjoy it. And hopefully they're listening to this, and kudos to them. And maybe they'll come back refreshed. So take us away, Fred. We're ready to roll out of here.